Harold Wilson said by the year 2000, people would be in what he termed the leisure age. Will the technology create opportunities for more leisure? I don't think so.
We know that there are tremendous technological changes going on now.
And I believe it's the most significant change that's happened to the world of work probably for the last 300 years. Suddenly we've found a way of creating value with very little human intervention.
Does work have a future? I think work does have a future. And is work good for you? It is very good for you. I think the future of work, at least for the next 10 or 20 years, I think was set by the recession itself. What happened in the recession? Downsizing, massive downsizing by organization. There are fewer people, they're doing more work, they're feeling more job insecure, they're working longer hours. And what's happened in terms of re-employment of those people is most of those people are now on short-term contract, they have their own, running their own businesses, they're freelancers. So the nature of work has changed. Jobs are no longer for life, and people now are really what we call in my trade the contingent worker. Their job is contingent upon them producing, but they could lose it.
10 or 15 years from now, we could see life expectancy double. That won't mean you're going to retire at 65 or 68. It might mean you're going to retire at 90. You might have a 60 or 70 year working life. How's that going to feel? How's it going to feel when you've got a 95-year-old working alongside a 23-year-old?
We see a rise in informality now. These are jobs that really don't belong in the formal economy. Taxes aren't paid, there are no labor inspections, there are no labor standards, wages are often late if they're paid at all, overtime is rampant, so they elude the standard legal and regulatory framework.
Automation, kind of artificial intelligence, robotics, I'd see that as being a very, very powerful force for change. I think second, around customization and people wanting to have far more choice about when they work, how they work, where they work. It's been described as the gig economy and this millennial group that's coming through. You know, we want to change the way we work, we want to have more control. I'd say that's a secondary thing. I suppose the third thing is an ever greater drive for efficiency, which puts huge pressure on businesses and puts huge pressure on the people operating in those businesses.
We need to realise that there's an increasing pace of innovation and change across the economy, which is affecting the world of work in all sorts of ways. It's creating uncertainty, it's creating volatility, it's creating complexity in a way that we haven't seen before.
We know that there are tremendous technological changes going on now, but that's only a partial beginning to the whole debate about future of work for us. We're not techno-determinist in the sense that we say all the jobs are going to disappear and that's it. Instead, we're looking at the ways in which technology will affect the world of work and how we can develop the policies so that the future of work is the future that we want it to be.
I think what this technology allows us to do, though, is people can be much more self-directing. So they can create their own agenda, they can work a little bit more at their own pace. I think it's going to put pressure on employers to make sure that they're attractive, because as we move into these so-called elastic talent pools, the gig economy, people are going to have so many more choices.
There will be counter trends in that some firms will say, hey, listen, what we want to do is create commitment here. We want reliability, we want a sustainable organization. That may happen, and if it proves to be successful, then maybe the trend will change. But I don't think in the short term, i.e. 5 to 10 years, that will change.
And we see some interesting examples, something that Finland launched, I think just this month, around actually you have a fixed wage, everybody receives the same level of salary, and if you continue to work on top of that, or if your job's changed by automation, actually you've still got a basic level of income. So I think we're going to see more and more of those kinds of initiatives.
And then we have the issue is the man-machine interface. Really important because these are not simple robotics. These are artificial intelligence robotics, right? And we're going to have issues, I think, in the future about does the robot control me or do I control the robot?
Because we are a normative organization and believe that people deserve to work in dignity and in jobs that are safe, that don't harm their health, that allow them to support themselves and their families. And in the changing world of work, that can become challenging.
You can imagine a future world of work where there is a very distributed workforce, where you have autonomous systems working independently from humans, maybe speaking to each other, where there are different ways of creating and developing outputs from those kinds of processes. And that brings the questions to the fore about who owns the risk, how should that risk be regulated, how do you make sure that you've got the responsibilities with the right people. You've only got to look at the autonomous vehicles world or indeed the artificial intelligence sphere to think how, if an artificial system creates a situation where a new risk is introduced or safety isn't necessarily designed into the algorithms, how would you regulate in that space?
I think the whole automation, artificial intelligence debate and how we're seeing that transform many businesses, that's increasing levels of stress. People are worried about what's my contribution, am I going to lose my job, how do I continue to add value, what's the value that I as a human being can create versus this wonderful algorithm or this fantastic robot that somebody's built. So I think people are struggling to find their place in the workforce. I don't think we as people are particularly good at collaborating with machines. We're used to having machines that do things that we tell them to do. In the future, we're going to be collaborating with a colleague, and that colleague just happens to be a machine. So I think the stress that that's bringing into the workplace as people are looking for their place, the place that they add value, I see that increasing over the next few years.
Then we have communication information technologies, which in my view we haven't managed well. So if you look at risk in organizations now, one of the factors never looked at is techno-stress, email overload, that people now feel they're on 7/24. And that has a risk because we don't have rest and recuperation or respite away from the communication technologies. We're on the smartphone all the time. And because it's so simple, we can access it at night when we're with our families.
One of the great assets that we actually have within the Health and Safety Executive is 40 years of investigating failure in the context of the workplace. That information is hugely valuable because if you can build it into innovation space, you can build it into new designs, new approaches and new technologies early enough, then hopefully you can design out some of the health and safety issues before they become problems.
So with all these kind of changes that are taking place, I think a well-being culture is needed. Now, why is it needed? Well, if people are more mobile and they no longer have loyalty to the employer because the employer no longer has loyalty to them, in other words, there's no real psychological contract between employer and employee anymore, right? If that's the case, you want to retain people for as long as you can. If you want to retain them for as long as you can, then you have to create a culture in which they feel valued, trusted.
Again, we're used to an environment where if we're busy, we feel valued, and we keep ourselves busy in order to feel valued. Maybe actually in the future we'll just be doing those small interventions occasionally, and that will add real value to the process, and the more mundane activity gets done by the machine.
A very interesting question, does work have a future? I think work does have a future. Will the technology create opportunities for more leisure? I don't think so. What it'll create is opportunities for people to do different things and different kinds of jobs, but not to stop work. And is work good for you? It is very good for you.
And I believe it's the most significant change that's happened to the world of work probably for the last 300 years. Much more significant than the Industrial Revolution, much more significant than coal and steam and all those other things, because suddenly we found a way of creating value with very little human intervention. So that's a big change, and that picks right at the heart of what humanity is all about.
Keeping cognitively active, being socially engaged with other people, connecting with them is a part of the human condition, very important, and that's what work provides you.